Okay, everybody, it's 11 o'clock. Thank you for that wonderful calming music and beautiful scenery, Megan. Just a reminder, please keep your cameras off and yourself muted during this presentation. We will save all questions for the end because Dr. Downing has a lot to get through today on using Jamboard and Zoom. So with that, go ahead, Dr. Downing.
Guess I can turn on my camera, shouldn't I? Sorry about that. All right, here I am in the flesh. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us for this session. I don't have a PowerPoint because I'm going to share with you information and some examples from the way I use Jamboard in my classes. So it's a perfect segue from the session that Mary and Rachel just provided about building community. It ties very well into everything we've talked about, but also the work that Jen was talking about, building that community, active learning, keeping the students engaged, and it's a very simple tool. And I was first introduced to the Jamboard tool in a virtual social hour with the Association of Leadership Educators, an event that they held last year, and it was just so simple. And I thought this is pretty neat. And then my next exposure was with the library. And I'm going to show you an example of that. I took a screenshot of theirs. And I was like, I think I'm going to use this in my classes. And just to share a little bit about me, I've been at the university for 21 years. I started on a grant position in the College of Education, and then I transitioned into IT where I was doing training and development on technology and education. That's what I was doing in the College of Ed as well. I started adjunct teaching for organizational leadership, found my passion, transitioned into a lecturer position, ultimately moved into tenure track, and now I'm tenured at the university. I teach in organizational leadership in the College of Arts and Sciences, and I also teach in honors, the Honors College, and I really enjoy that. I share that as a bit of background because I want you to know that I had a lot of experience in teaching online, and I had even taken online classes as an adult learner myself. So I was always passionate about online learning, and my dissertation was even about building social presence and faculty-student interaction in the online learning environment. So again, something that's a very passionate topic for me, something I feel very strongly about, building that sense of engagement. But what we went through last spring, I don't need to tell you guys, was very different, even for those of us who are experienced in teaching online regularly. Switching to a synchronous mode of learning was very different from our traditional asynchronous mode of online education. And so I felt a huge sense of responsibility, as I'm sure you all did as well, in keeping my students engaged and kind of pulling them over that finish line while we were all dealing with so many plates spinning in the air and so many uncertainties in the spring. And then had some time to think over the summer about how I was going to do this, make this work in the fall, because I had two classes that would have been face-to-face, but I was teaching them synchronously online. And I wanted them to be as close to that classroom experience as I could, particularly because one of them was first-year students who had graduated from high school in the midst of a pandemic, and now we're entering their first year of college in the midst of the pandemic. And using this very simple tool was one way that I think I achieved that and helped it, and students really expressed their appreciation. So I'm not going to ramble about my motivation anymore. Just wanted to kind of give that information to you to kind of set the stage. And I'm going to share my screen, and then later in the session, Ashley's going to help me by keeping me on track and on time. But primarily what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to share with you some examples from different classes and how I could use it. And then when I get to about slide 18, and don't sound daunting, I'm going to kind of go through these quickly. I will have Ashley share a link to the Jamboard that you'll be able to pull up, and then you will be able to participate in an interactive way. If you have questions at any time during the presentation, pop them into the chat, and then Ashley will bring those up later, okay? So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. I almost shared the screen of you guys with yourselves. Happy Zoom. All right. So hopefully everybody can see the Jamboard now. Thumbs up.
We can see your canvas right now. We don't see Jamboard.
Oh, okay, this is actually a Jamboard.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I took a screenshot of how I keep the link available to the students. I create the Jamboard and we use the same one all semester. So here it is right here. And the tool that I just used is the laser. So it disappears. It doesn't clutter up things. It's something that you can point out to the students. This toolbar is over here to the left, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I just wanted to share with you that you can create Jamboard spontaneously and share the link to them in the chat. And anybody that has the link, if you've set it up with the proper permissions, can edit it, or you can keep it restricted so that they can just view. But I keep a class Jamboard for every class, and I have the link right here, very easily accessible, just like I do with like the Zoom links and things like that. So this was just an example. Then I'm changing to the pointer tool, and I'm just going to delete this image and get it out of the way and show you how one of the easy ways you can use it if you're not comfortable with integrating it into your instruction is you can use it as a check-in tool. So this was with my first year students. I just wanted to have a fun way to check in with how they were handling all the Zoom. And they were very honest. And one of the neatest things about it is once they access this Jamboard, it is anonymous. So they can be comfortable with what they're saying, sharing it without feeling judged. And so it's encouraging. So what these little colorful things that you see here are the Post-its. And all they do is click on here, and the sticky note tool comes up. You type what you want, and then you hit save. It stays open so they can add multiple comments if they'd like to, and then they click and move them around. And as the instructor, you can move them around if they start piling up so that things aren't too complex. What you see here is an image that I added to my page and another image. So I prepared this slide in advance, and this is a text box created with this tool. So you can add the images by clicking this tool, add image, and then it brings up a interactive dialog box here where you can drag a file over of your own, or you can search the web to find images related to what you're talking about. Once the students become comfortable with this, they start adding them as well. But I use the quadrants here so they could add their comments in the Post-its, how they felt about Zoom fatigue. This is the screenshot of the one the library uses in one of the information literacy sessions. And then she broke us into small groups, 5 small groups, and the students assigned to each of the groups had this Jamboard as a point of reference. You can actually have them make the comments on the page itself, or they can make the comments in the chat or come back to live discussion. You choose how you want to set it up. Here's a free share space. Again, I was using these sorts of things so students would feel comfortable with how they were feeling during the transition to online learning. And so they shared it was a free share space. So I have all kinds of things on here. And again, you are going to have access to this link so you can click through and actually, look at these in more detail if you're interested in doing so. You'll notice sometimes some little emoticon type images. These are actually found through that Google search. And then once they're put on there, just shrunk down to size, the students started doing those as well. And what I do is I typically have a prompt up here. And then I have, this is like one of the first slides or Jamboard slides I used in a particular class, in this honors class. So I have my prompt. I have this little instruction that's telling them if they need to click forward, they can do so using these. And then I have this to point out that the 4th tool on the toolbar is the sticky note. And I usually give them a real quick demo like I did to you guys. So this particular slide, the students were going to be reading an assigned reading. We're going to take a look at another slide about it on the next Jamboard slide. But I wanted to set the stage for them because there's so much there's so much out there on social media and in the news and such about the word liberal and with negative connotations. And it was very important for me that they didn't read this article about liberal arts education with these negative connotations that are sometimes getting pushed out through popular media. So I wanted to see where they stood and what they thought when they heard these terms, because that was setting the stage for this particular class, civic engagement, servant leadership. And so I have 3 Post-its that I created. And then I asked them, this was an open discussion. Notice that they are comfortable sharing their humor at this time because civic engagement, this one working on your Honda Civic, you know, so it can be fun. And I make sure that they are comfortable and know that they can share what they want to share. But again, it's anonymous, so they're maybe a little bit more comfortable with that. This is the actual article that they then were assigned to read after that previous discussion. And then when we came back, I broke them into 3 random small groups using breakout rooms and had them discuss the sections of the article as it was divided up and then share their thoughts. And I want to make a point here that I think is important is that, again, Jamboard is very simple. I share the link with them in the chat. They can pull it up on their phone, on an iPad. They can pull it up if they're on a laptop, and they can add their content. But if a particular student in your class doesn't have access to a technology for some reason, or they're having struggles with theirs in the small group environment, I set it up where I say that you can individually add comments, or you can set one person from your team to be the scribe, so to speak, and then that person adds the post-its. You can also ask certain groups to use certain colors to try to help divide things up and keep things organized. You do what works best for your content. And now the rest are just going to be some examples. They know that we will have these breakout discussions when a guest speaker comes. And so that keeps them alert. And then I have them share in the small groups in our next session, the key takeaways from their guest speaker. We were doing a service learning and civic engagement project using the Marison philanthropy program, as well as doing specific service learning, even in the virtual environment with Paul Gottbroth at Be Concerned. And so he came as a guest speaker to our class. And then we also have an information literacy module in this course. And so I had them discuss, I wanted it to be more than them just working through that information literacy module on their own. And since we didn't have in-class opportunities for small group breakouts and visits to the library, I used the breakout rooms and the Jamboard to get them to draw from that and to have an engaging discussion about it. So another guest speaker, just another example of that. And then you can also use it for brainstorming. It's essentially an interactive whiteboard. And so I was getting ready to divide them up in teams. I wanted to see what their thoughts were on which project we should focus on, because we were taking a unique approach to the Marison Student Philanthropy Project. So this was their sharing. This is a picture that one student shared because I encouraged them to take a brain break and a mental health break when we had that snow day. And she and one of her dorm mates made a little snowman. So she shared the picture here and called him Olaf Jr. And then again, we use this as a brain writing breakout room for planning for the teamwork and team formation, because I had students who lived on campus. I had students who lived 50 miles away. I had students who were purely online and never going on campus, and they had mixed emotions about how they wanted to form their teams. So I was able to find out what their concerns were, and then I gave them options to choose their own teams so that those who wanted to meet on campus using the Norse 9 principles, if they were living on campus, could do so and take advantage of that presence, but those who lived far away or lived even locally didn't feel required to come to campus. I also use it a lot like we do PowerPoint. So since I knew we were going to be using Jamboard, they had an assigned article to talk about. I was trying to inspire their critical thinking. And so this is a screenshot that I've added on here, and so this is an idea that I learned from something that one of my students put on here. I didn't even realize that was under there. I forgot. So he said it would be fun to fill a jar with a mayonnaise jar with vanilla pudding and start eating it out of with a spoon. That would be entertaining. I confess I did not take his advice. And so again, after the readings, I put a smaller image here of that prompt, that 4A's prompt, to keep them thinking in that critical thinking process. And then I had 2 teams sharing here and 2 teams sharing here. And then another guest speaker. By this time, I have them divided into 4 permanent teams. So at first I'm doing random small group assignments so that they get that opportunity in breakout rooms to have those small group discussions across the class roster. And then once the teams are formed, because I've used I've gathered that information and figured out what worked best for them. Now they are in their small groups and they're having their permanent small group discussions. And this isn't about the project that they'll be doing together, but they're having these small group intimate discussions about our guest speaker and other class activities that helps them build essentially social relationships, that helps them form trust, and that helps them work better as small groups and teams when they do work on their team projects. And then we're getting ready to move into working on their research paper. And I know that that makes them nervous. So we had some open, again, anonymous discussion, making sure they understood what the different components of it were. This is just one example. Here's how I used it in a teamwork class, having them assess different concepts about rewarding and evaluating teams. These are screenshots of slides that I put on here. And there are 4 quadrant questions where I had them answer with their teams. This one is just how should teams perform be evaluated here, and the rewards at the bottom. So there's different ways that you can use it that works best for you. This was an opening to my Honors 101 class. Similarly, trying to get their perspective and what information they had coming in. And now I want Ashley to share the link with you. And how you share the link while you're doing it is you click on share, and you have the option then to share it with specifics. But what I always do is get the link, and you can change the editing ability to anyone with a link. Mine right now is set with edit. You can change it to keep it to be restricted so that they can only view. So the important thing, if you want them to participate actively, is anyone with the link can edit. And then you copy the link and you put it in the chat. And as you see, people start joining, but everybody's an anonymous animal. So I have an anonymous dragon and a panda and a moose and a cheetah. And while others are joining on this squirrel scale, how do you feel today? So you could instruct your students to use a Post-it note, a sticky note to say something, or they could use the pen and say, I feel like an 8. So how do you guys feel? Share. There we go. We have some activity.
The link to this Jamboard is in the chat if more people want to join in. So you start out on slide 1 when you join, so make sure you go to slide 18 to see the squirrels.
And you can you manage that by clicking forward. Just click, click, click. While other people are joining, because you're going to participate more on the next slide as well. And again, yes, the sticky notes are the 4th tool on the left if you want to use that. If you want to go back to the pointer. Now, there are 2 writing tools. The laser will disappear. So if I'm emphasizing this, I disappear it after I've done. Now I sound like my 5-year-old grandkids when I say disappear it. And you can switch to the pen tool, and that one will stay. And I wanted to start with this one to show that as things start to pile up, again, you can move things around. Super simple, super simple. If somebody moves something by accident, you can move it back. If you have layered images, you actually have the option here to send things backwards, bring things forward, much like in PowerPoint. You can edit, duplicate, or delete an item that way, or you can just highlight an item to delete it. The toolbar is very straightforward and simple, and there's a lot that you can do, with these different tools. They're different, the circle tool, the 6 looks like me. Oh, somebody is very creative over here. So it's this is just a fun interaction, just helps building that, taking away that the things that Rachel was just talking about in the last session about kind of demystifying the professor and making the classroom a comfortable, approachable place. I would like to say I'm 8, but I'm really kind of 5. My laptop battery is actually expanding, and Jamie just sent me a message and said, you shouldn't be using it. I said, I have no choice. I'm getting ready to do a presentation at 11. So if I seem a little rattled, that is why. Full transparency. So I know we're getting closer to the end of time. So I'm going to go ahead and advance to the next page, and I'd like you guys to do that too. And I want you to share, how would you use Jamboard in your classes? And I was going to put you in breakout rooms to do this, but since we're at 11:20, we'll forego that. I think you probably had plenty of experience with breakout rooms, but I spoke a little longer than I intended. My intent was to put you in small breakout rooms to discuss amongst yourself and then come back. But just go ahead and use the Post-it note and share your thoughts. Anyone that feels comfortable in doing so, share your thoughts on how you might use Jamboard in your classes. I don't know what this is. Well, someone asked that, puts that they're still stuck on how to use this during an in-person class. And so I have a lot of students who bring laptops to in-person classes, not all of them, but a lot of them do. And so my plan is to use the Jamboard because, again, they can pull it up on their phone. They can add and comment and draw and do all of the things on their phone that you can do on the laptop. But my hope is to be able to use it just as effectively in the classroom as I can in the online classroom, because then I'll project the Jamboard up on the screen, and then students will be able to, contribute. And the neat thing is just having that anonymous factor.
Thank you for bringing up the phone. We did have a question about that. Do students have any issues navigating to Jamboard if they're joining Zoom from their phone? So like running Zoom and Jamboard at the same time?
No, they're usually pretty good at, they're usually more proficient at navigating between apps on their phone than we are. But as long as they are comfortable with, you can keep the Zoom, running in the background. Essentially, it winds up minimizing. And so they still have the audio, but they pull up the Jamboard from the link. And so they're actively seeing it. I always keep the Jamboard in my screen shared, just in case there's a student who isn't able to join for some reason, and maybe they're just talking to their small group to share.
And then do you have any idea about the accessibility of Jamboard, how accessible it is for students who are possibly using a screen reader or low vision?
That is the one thing that I do not know.
Okay.
I do not know. I wanted to mention that it's just a quick Google, just Google jamboard.com. You don't have, the students, of course, don't have to have an account to be able to access it, because anybody with a link can do so. Again, it's really nice that you can create it on the fly. You can share the link with students in the course or in the Zoom chat, as I said. What I do, because I've not had any reports of anyone having any problems with this, but what I have done is I summarize, I constantly kind of narrate and summarize, when they come back into the room and they're back into their breakout rooms. And so I haven't run into that challenge, but it is something that I'm aware of and I need to investigate.
Okay, thank you. And then also another question, can participation be by name rather than anonymous if you want to give them credit?
They would need to be logged in to Google, and joining it in that way, I believe. So I have always, to simplify things, I have just done it as anonymous. And when I have needed to know who someone is, I've asked them to include their name in the Post-it note.
Okay, cool. And then somebody is getting a can't sync your changes message. Have you ever had that happen before?
I have not.
Okay.
I
would probably suggest closing out of the link and reopening it just to see if there's something that's dealing with refresh. So that might be able to help you if you're getting that message.
I've never had that issue before. there was something I was going to say related to that. I have had that problem, you know, when I like to use the pages in Canvas as a wiki that they can add content to or sign up for things, or, you know, just an interactive wiki within the course. And I've had problems with that there, but I've never had that problem with multiple users in the Jamboard before. I should mention that it has a limit of 20 slides. Once upon a time, it was a limit of 12. But now there can be up to 20 boards in a Jamboard. As an instructor, once you've created them, let me see, duplicate. I'll just show you mine as soon as my computer, I'm having trouble with my internet connection. Maybe that's why you're having problems. Welcome to the country. But I was going to just show you these are all my Jamboards. So, you know, that I have going. I've used them, you know, for open discussion after students have had assigned a film to watch, many things like that in it. And like I said, you can create multiple boards. So you could have one for each group. So they could have a group collaborative. Oh, I see somebody wrote that. Yes, a group collaborative space. And I see some really great ideas here. And I hope that you guys will find it as useful of a tool as I had. It's very simple and it's adaptable on the fly. For this one, I used, you know, I used the Jamboard tools to put this here, and then I had divided it up and was going to ask you to use different colors based on your team. And then last but not least, I guess this is something on my thing that's messed up because that little squiggle is showing up everywhere. But one positive good thing, I would ask them sometimes to close out or open a class with this, trying to keep the positivity going, but also being open to any anonymous questions, frustrations, concerns with the learning environment, course, assignments, whatever. It's a free share open thing. And so sometimes I would open the class with this, and then I'd even have that kind of Zen music playing in the background. I start every class with that. It's Quiet Quest. And they have a number of videos out there with beautiful aerial photography and kind of Zen music. So Ashley.
One last question. Have you ever tried to embed a Jamboard actually onto a Canvas page?
I have not. I have shared screenshots of it and I have shared links to it, but I have never embedded it. And Vanessa and Ashley, that's something we should experiment with.
All right, we can definitely do that.
That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. That's a neat idea. My guess is that it would just be kind of a minimized thing. So I've stopped my screen sharing.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Because we're about at time. We have about 3 minutes before our next session. It's going to be on the same link, so just hang out here. And thank you so much, Megan, for your wonderful presentation.
You're welcome. I know it was a lot in a short period of time. And, you know, if you had copied the link, you have it, so you can go back and explore and play with that. It's a copy, you can't hurt it, you know, so don't worry about that. And the other thing is that link to this Jamboard will actually be provided in the SOFI section description for the session as well. I asked Ashley not to put it out there yet, you know, because I didn't want you playing, I wanted you listening. And so that's another suggestion, is don't share it too soon, you know, if that's the case. So
yep, I think this is a great way to engage students. So super fun way, and I love all your creative ideas for it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's just simple. And you know, like I said, I've been teaching online since the days when we were told to keep everything text-based. You needed to use no audio, no video. You had to really be cognizant of bandwidth and technical restrictions among some of the students and such. So this was just such a simple tool, you know, that still kind of informs some of my choices. And so it's just such a simple tool. They didn't have to have a new application downloaded or anything. And it's very easy. So if anybody has any questions about it, just feel free to let me know. And that's enough from me.
Thanks so much. So we are going to switch over to Jennifer Holt, who's going to be giving her presentation. Once again, just keep your cameras and mics muted, and I will be recording the questions to have for her at the end. So whenever you're ready, Jennifer.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. We do have about a minute or so. I guess I should wait. Do you want me to wait or do you want me to go ahead and get started?
It says 11:30 on my end, so whenever you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay, perfect. We'll go ahead then. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. So, and I have this, I know it's not in complete presentation mode, but this will help me just a little bit so I can see some notes as well. So forgive me if this isn't perfect, but what I want to talk to you about today and engage you a little bit and some of the things that I've experienced and some of these aha moments that happened with online learning, and some were enhanced, of course, with the pandemic. So instead of pushing our students away, hopefully we can pull them in just a little bit better with a couple of tools here. So that's the biggest thing I want to talk about. The abstract was already listed, so I don't want to read it word for word, but the big deal here is students today are living in this clickable world, right? They click through everything. Everything is images, it's verbal, it's visual, it's very dynamic. However, I took an online class and the experience was very, very different and very overwhelming. So I incorporated a couple of things to help with that. So we don't have to do a formal poll here, but I just want you to think about this. How do you learn? Do you learn by reading, listening, watching, doing, experiencing? And do you learn differently now than you used to? So as we go through this, maybe keep that in mind. One of the things that I've added to a lot of my courses are kind of these pop-ups of motivation. And I love this one from Nelson Mandela. I never fail, I either win or learn. And I like this one. I like all motivational quotes. Honestly, quotes are one of my favorite things, but it takes the emphasis sometimes off of the grade and it puts it back into learning. And a learning environment really should feel safe, and students should feel safe to fail because they can fail and they can try again and they can learn. And that's really what it's about. So traditional learning, we had reading, we had writing, we had tests, we were sitting in a classroom. Then we had lectures. Here's a professor right here at NKU who's teaching in a lecture hall. But let's take a look a little bit closer. Right over here, we have students looking down, we have students on their phone. I see this, I don't know if you do. Then we went to full online learning. Now, this is what we want, right? She's sitting here, she's completely attentive. Every single person has their camera on. However, this is a lot of times what's going on. So if we look at these two environments just side by side, looking at these results honestly could be from either situation, right? Because the students do leave and then they're on their own. So what do you think? And you can type this in chat, but those two environments, what's the difference in those two environments? And what do you think causes any of the learning issues? I'm trying to even see if I can see the chat. Yep, a little bit. Think about those two differences. All right. So one of the main differences is the senses. So when we're in person, we can touch, we have sight, we can smell, we can hear, right? There's probably not taste unless some students are eating, but it's a full-on experience that's engaging our senses and it's personal. When it's online, most of those are away. They've gone away. Sometimes the only thing they can do is hear. Maybe they're not even watching. And we as professors, we sometimes can't even see them. They have their camera off. So the bottom line is, I hear this all the time, students are different today. I don't think students are different today. I think they're different because they're learning differently. They have different advantages. They have different technology. They live in a different environment, but they're still the same people. They're still students who want to learn. So I'm a numbers person, so let's look at a couple of statistics here. Some of these are a little alarming and from a couple of different resources, but the average 20 to 24-year-old reads only 15 minutes a day, but spends 2.5 hours on social media a day to 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours. games over an hour a day, and watches almost 3 hours of TV. The typical adult learner attention span wanes about 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to lose some of you guys here soon. Hopefully I don't, but the average student's attention, only 5 minutes. Gen Z, who again grew up with smartphones in their hand, literally from being a baby holding a phone, 8 to 12 seconds. Keep in mind our average class time, 1 hour. So then what do? We learn by all of our senses. We learn by doing, seeing, touching, feeling, watching, reading, experiencing. It's an experience. So I kind of took this method from marketing, right? There's push and pull marketing. Well, there's also push and pull teaching. So we can do that and we can apply that here in our online setting. And the other thing that we need to do is break down that overwhelm. I took an online class, and let me tell you, I thought, well, I teach online. I've taken classes online. Well, for some reason, it was much different for me this time around. And it was white and black text. It was just overwhelming to look at. And then every link I clicked on was more text. And then the feedback came in more black and white text. So I had a difficult time. So I thought, well, if I'm having a difficult time, how can I help students? So I don't know about you, but sometimes this is what I was doing, and I've changed this up a lot. But if students were having an issue or they didn't understand something, I would send them more information, right? Let me give you another link. Let me give you something else to read. Well, a lot of times that made it worse because I was just pushing more out to them, more to read, and they already didn't understand. So instead, what I needed to do was pull them in. There are a lot of ways to do that. And we'll go over a couple of examples. So what students remember, 10% of what they read, only 10%, 20% of what they hear. So it's important that all these videos and verbal audio recordings we're doing, that's important. That's doubling learning right there, that little effort. 30% of what they see, 50% of what they see and hear, because see here we're engaging 2 senses versus 1. 70% of what they say and write. This is super true of me. When I study, I had to write, oops, I just did that, whoops. I had to write things down or I didn't remember it. But 90% of what they do. I love this Chinese proverb, tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand. It's very powerful. So to enable learning, teaching should be very short. It should be dynamic. Remember the 5 minute student's attention. This is a student to adult attention span. So you have 5 to 15 minutes. Now, then take a break, re-engage. So one of the things I actually learned at SOFI last year that I've incorporated in a lot of my courses this year is telling them their time investment. So instead of clicking on a video and that lecture is an hour long because we wanted to fit everything in, I've done little short bursts of videos and it's one concept at a time, but I tell them watching this video is a 6 minute time investment. So they know before they click onto it to listen or watch it. But short, hyper-focused. But if it's engaging and interactive, it's going to be better. And if it's dynamic. So what do I mean by dynamic? Reading is very static. It's typically on a white screen or a white page with black text. It's very static. The only thing that happens is what you're imagining. Dynamic is if you're involved. Think of how dynamic a television show or a video game is. So we can take some of these elements and we can incorporate them. So learning is one-dimensional often, right? If we have one-dimensional learning where it's just text on a screen, we might only get one-dimension quality of work. But how can we add to that? How can we go from, we don't have a 0 dimension, we have a 1. How can we go towards these dimensions? See how you progress all the way to this dynamic interactive Rubik's Cube, right? That started as a line. Well, we can add meaning, we can add senses, we can add connection, we can add active learning experiences. So ever wonder if anything's lost in translation in your assignment or in the text that you push out versus what you receive back? mean, I've seen on my evaluations sometimes, well, the instructions weren't clear. I couldn't really tell what she wanted. You know, have you ever seen some of these comments and wondered why? Well, because some things are very lost in translation. There's nothing behind the text, and text or emails often missing the emotion. So right here's an example. This is pretty funny, but it says, "I am here for you." The student says, "Thanks, I'm going through a tough time, so that means a lot. And sorry, I lost all my contacts. Who is this? This is your Uber driver. I'm here to pick you up," right? Oh, and I don't know if this is a student, but the person. But see how there was missing context there? So here's another example. So my niece actually walked into the house the other day and I thought of this. So she seemed a little alarmed. She said, "There's a man in your bushes." And she kind of caught me off guard. So that's all she said, nothing else. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's like a creeper outside who's getting ready to come in and get us, right? Well, it turns out in reality, I walk outside. It was actually getting kind of dark, so it was an odd situation, but a landscaper who had been there earlier was there picking up some stuff that he'd left on the job site that he needed for another morning job. But what was missing from that was you need more than just a verbal, or sometimes you need a visual. You need context to support that. Fonts is one of the ways we can do that, right? So a lot of our fonts are just black and white. Well, look at this one. A friend of mine who's a graphic artist sent these to me, but it's red, it has little hearts. I mean, I could even do an audio overview. "I will always find you," right? And that makes you have, you know, hopefully like a little bit of a warm, fuzzy feeling. What about this one? Looks a little scary. What if I had a voiceover that sounded scary? "I will always find you." Look at the difference in the two, right? And it's just a visual and a verbal. That's all I did there. But which one? Maybe you'll remember both. The other thing we can do is add some relevance, right? And everything's not relevant to us right then. I mean, I get these all the time. "It's time to restart your device." I click, no, I don't click restart now. I always do try later, right? Remind me later. Because it's not relevant to me until my computer crashed. And then as soon as I call IT, they say, "Well, did you get this message?" Well, of course I did. So find a way to make it relevant then. The other thing we can do is make it personal. So if there's a connection or a commitment or a relationship, if students feel that, they're more obligated to meet those, and I don't want to call them demands, but to live up to that because they feel like they don't want to personally let you down. So one of the things that I did to add a little bit of fun to this was an undergrad class. I used to do this in a lot of my classes was, you know, I would put out candy and I would say, "Okay, everyone, as you walk in the door, grab a piece of candy from the table." And I, of course, had the candy already counted. So there were, you know, maybe 5 Hershey bars, 5 Skittles, but it was for a group. So then I said, "Okay, everyone who has the Reese cup, go sit up here in the right-hand corner. Everyone who has Skittles, let's go sit here." And why did I do that? Well, it was fun. They got a little treat. You know, who doesn't like candy? Sometimes I did it with chips. I did it with all different things, cookies, but they had something in common. It was a starting point. It was a connection. You're in the same class. You like the same candy. Then you can continue that. You can build upon that foundation. Why did you select that candy? What do you like about it? What else do you have in common? So going back to the power of images, one of the easiest ways to ensure that learners store information in their long-term memory is to pair it with an image. So after 3 days, we already learned this, there's only 10 to 20% of written or spoken information that's retained. If you add an image, it goes up to 65%. That's because the written or verbal goes into your short-term memory. Whereas if you add an image or visual or make it dynamic, it goes immediately into your long-term memory. So going back to the example of when an image is important, I was reading a paper, this was years ago, but I was thinking about when I was doing this presentation, and a student was writing this paper about bats. And he would talk about Batman and, being a Batman and how bats needed oil. And it was just a very confusing paper. And in my mind, I'm picturing this terrifying bat, right? And then he says Batman. So then I'm picturing this, right? It's a very confusing paper. And then at the end, he finally mentions baseball. But all this needed to put that into context was either to say the word baseball, which would have helped some, of course, but look at this image. That would have cleared everything up. So take a look at this picture. See anything, hear anything, feel anything? Did you guess what it's about? What if I add color? Any better? What if I do this? So how much more does this video mean to you than this picture? What did I do to this? I brought it to life. I added sound, I added color, I added emotion. And of course I have to take credit. I think that the sound of a child's laughter, there's nothing more beautiful. And of course, these are my daughters, but bring it to life, then it brings some emotion and connection. It adds more senses. And you can do this in any environment. So talk about overwhelming tasks. I hear students tell me all the time, it's so overwhelming, or I don't even know where to start, right? It's like telling a child that they need to clean their room. They honestly will sit there. They're not exactly sure even where to start. Well, you can break it down for them into steps, right? Put your clothes in the basket. Put all the balls in a basket. Then you can clean the floor. It's not much different with assignments. If you tell a student they have a 50-page research paper due, some of them are so frozen they can't get started. Well, and that's one of the reasons I love our Light the Way, because that's what we do a lot of times, especially with kids today or students today. And this is true of graduate and undergraduate. We are used to step-by-step tools. The GPS does this for us. Recipes do this. Our phone does this. It's a click through and click next society that we're living in. Well, then we can do that as well. So I do that. I'll create some of the pieces, but not all of the pieces, because that critical thinking element is what they're here to do and learn about. So here's an example. I gave them a template. This isn't an assignment. Let me see here. I want to pull it up. So here's an assignment. This is a secondary research design assignment. And I gave them a scenario. And the original assignment was that they had to identify the problem, the causes, and the symptoms. And how they were going to do that was acting as a consultant. And they were the ones that were going to create a research plan to, of course, find out what the actual problem was in this scenario. However, I wasn't getting back what I wanted. And I thought, well, I know people who've been in the industry for 10 years and some of them can't do this. So why am I expecting a student to be able to do this, right? Especially given kind of a made up scenario here. So what I did was I said, okay, let's practice. So I broke the assignment down into two parts. And for the first assignment, I created the outline for them. I basically showed them exactly what they needed to do. And then we practiced it with Pillsbury cookies versus the coffee example here that they were doing. And I picked Pillsbury, of course, because who doesn't love cookies? And it's, fun to talk about. But then they could take their coffee example and put it in the same format. So they basically kind of had to just fill this out. The next part of the assignment, though, had them bring it to life. What I wanted them to do was now go as part B of the assignment and you find a beverage, and it can be coffee, it can be a soft drink that has a problem, and then you put it into a research proposal to suggest how to solve that problem. So what I did was I wanted to see, now that they'd learned the concept, could they apply it? Because what I was seeing a lot of times, and I still see this, is students will do very well at, mixing and matching or saying a definition. But when I ask them to give me an example from their real world work environment, sometimes only half of them can do that. So if that's true, if they really can't apply it or recognize it in the real world, they didn't learn it. So we need to step back from that. So why is that maybe? Well, because we're doing a lot of case studies. So is a case study the same experience as real life? Do you think so? Would you hire a business that only studied cases and never worked with a client? Possibly. What about this? Would you fly with a pilot that only trained on a simulator? It's a personal decision. But the example or the point I'm trying, definitely no, I wouldn't either, right? But the point that I'm trying to make is case studies are great. They're great practice, but we have to take it a step further to them. Remember the Chinese proverb, a case study might be showing them, but how do we involve them in that experience? So we need to bridge that gap a little bit of what we're pushing out, the case studies we're pushing out, and then get them to pull in information from their own real world experiences. So here's another assignment that I adjusted a little bit. And can I make it bigger? Yes, I can. I'm so sorry. Here we go. So here's another assignment that I brought to life a little bit. And this assignment really was fine. It was a discussion board, but it was give me basically one word that describes you as a consumer and tell me why. So I got things like I'm frugal, I like value, I am impulsive, just different things. And they would tell me a little bit why. And it was really fine. Nothing really wrong with it. However, it wasn't really engaging. And discussion boards, in my experience, can be a little bit dry or forced, especially the reply post. So students live in a Snapchat world. I watch this firsthand every day, all day here at my house. They're taking pictures and videos and voicing everything all day, every day. So I said, well, let's do that. Don't tell me, remember again, the Chinese proverb, show me what kind of consumer you are. They could take a picture or they could take a video. So here's a picture of the girl that was frugal. She's using all her coupons. Here's the one that was impulsive. She buys a lot of stuff. And then she, looks at her receipt later and has cognitive dissonance. But this made so much more of a dynamic board than just telling me what the word was. And it could be a video of them or a video or a picture they found. So this assignment I recreated after talking with the student, and I will tell you a little bit about it. This is for an ideation to innovation class. This is a master's level class, but this is their second assignment, but their first, real assignment that they turn in on their own. They have to come up with 9 problems that your experience or they're experiencing and have an innovation or solution for. Can you imagine the overwhelm? This is an innovation class. They're thinking they have to create the next telephone or Model T. And the amount of students who would call and panic, and they only have really less than a week to do this because we have to move on and the class builds week by week. So what I did was I broke the assignment down. After talking to a student, he said, you just don't understand. I'm not like you. I'm not experiencing any problems. And I said, oh, I'm sure you are. So I said, do this. Take the next day. This was a holiday weekend. And this recently actually just happened. And I said, take the weekend. You just said you're having people over. I want you to relax. I want you to enjoy it. But I want you to watch your environment. As you go through the weekend and celebrate the holiday, I want you to write down every single thing that bothers you or annoys you. I don't care how trivial, how small, write it down. And then we're going to reconnect on Monday after the holiday. So we did that, and he actually did have a lot of problems. And then we talked about, well, how do you find a solution for it? So I recreated the assignment just that way. Now, I did give them a professional example. This is Amazon's pill pack, which is just an incredible example of innovation. If you want to click on that and look at that later. But I also gave them an example as well. So we'll just watch these real quick. This is me. So I'm Swiffering. The Swiffer keeps falling. The verbal or the sound's not really that important. But the point is here, can you recognize and empathize with the problem in this video? Then here's a solution. So I'm taking a little rubber mat that you use to open containers with, so it's kind of sticky. And I'm taking just a hair tie. I'm putting it around the Swiffer because there isn't a grippy handle that does this. And I'm showing how I'm innovating this product by solving with the solution. It doesn't fall anymore. So the reason, there's two reasons. I gave them a professional video because I wanted them to see that, but I wanted them to see an example of how they can recognize a problem and how they can have a solution and how little innovation solutions have to be. But I also wanted them to see that this doesn't need to be an amazing video quality. Just have, do this with your smartphone and upload it. These are less than 30 seconds. So I broke the assignment down into those steps, which made the assignment so much more easy to tackle for those students. So let's go back. Let's see here. So one more example, this is actually the same class, and I want to show you this, where they start with that example. So they wrote it down, they had it on paper, they do a sketch, and then they pivot. So the textbook talks about pivot all the time. You have to change, you have to adapt. Well, how do you do that? What does pivot mean? And I heard on one of the evaluations, if she tells me to pivot one more time, I'm going to scream. So they weren't really understanding that, even though it was in the text. So I found a video that verbalizes this. We'll start here a little bit.
Just follow my lead.
Okay. They just reviewed the sketch.
Come on, Charlie. All right, okay. Here we go. All right, ready? Yeah. Turn. Okay. Turn. Turn.
I don't think we can turn anymore.
I just don't think it's gonna fit.
Oh yeah, well, come on, up. Yes. Here we go. Pivot. 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 Pivot.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Okay, I don't think it's gonna pivot anymore.
You think?
All right, let's bring it back down and try again.
Okay. Oh. Okay, yeah, I think it's really stuck now.
Can't believe that didn't work.
I know, me neither. I mean, you had a sketch.
So, and that was kind of the pivotal moment right there too, when Rachel says, I know you had a sketch, right? And that's what they start with in this class, right? They started with a sketch. They started writing the idea down, right? And then visualizing it and pivoting and changing it. So it was a way that they could actually see this in, motion. And of course it was funny as well. So I know we're almost at time, and I know that took a lot of time, but any questions, thoughts? Feedback?
We did have a question from Reiko. She says, you're using a lot of visuals and pictures, graphics, etc. How do you overcome the challenges with accessibility?
So I do try to, I'm actually fixing a class right now with that. I do try to make sure that there is text available. We did a class last year with SOFI that the whole class was about how to make sure that it was accessible to everyone. So I do try to make sure that the text for everything is written out so someone can see it or read it if they can't visualize it or get that graphic. The other thing that I do, I do hold, even though I teach mainly online classes now, I do hold Zoom sessions that are in person where I go over all of it with them. So I just feel like it's an added benefit for those who want to do it. And you know, it's just something that brings that connection a little bit deeper.
Awesome, thank you. Are there any other questions? Because we are almost at time. Okay, well, if there isn't anything else, thank you so much for your presentation, Jennifer. That was really great. A lot of really great information. Just a reminder to everybody here that there is an Ask Us Anything session after this, where we can answer any and all questions that you have. Thank you again, Jennifer. This was great.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for everyone who attended. Thank you.